were asking me about the Darwinian approach.
Well, because, you know, if you're making the claim, which I think is it's a justifiable claim, whether or not it's accurate, is that our ethics are grounded in something like the necessity. We could say the necessity for survival and reproduction, which are variants of survival, obviously. That's a Darwinian claim. It's the claim that the American Pragmatists advanced as well, because this is Peirce and William James, and primarily,
Dewey, yeah.
you know, they believe that your knowledge was a tool. Knowledge was a tool to advance being in the world, let's say, survival in the world, and that you justified your knowledge not because you had final knowledge of anything, but because your tools were good enough to obtain the end that you were aiming at. That was the validation process. If your theory was good enough to get you to where you were aiming, then it was true enough. And the pragmatists believed that that was the best that you could do with truth. And then when Darwin advanced his theory, the American pragmatists said, oh, look, Darwin's theory is actually an extension of pragmatism. And pragmatism is the notion that your truths are good enough to facilitate your survival. But this is the rub. So that's Darwin. There's a truth that's embedded in the Darwinian worldview. That is not the same truth that's embedded in the Newtonian worldview. There's a conflict between those two. And the Newtonian worldview is basically the world of facts, right? Roughly speaking. And there's a set of claims about truth that are based in a Newtonian worldview. And they're not the same as the ones that are based in the Darwinian point of view. It's a big problem. And part of the reason that I've been arguing with Sam for like 3 years is because he's an evolutionary psychologist in principle and a biological thinker, and yet he essentially has a Newtonian worldview, that it's the world of facts that's real. It's like, no, there's a world of values, and the world of values is devoted not towards determining what's objectively true, but towards facilitating survival, and those are not the same thing. Now, there's obviously a relationship between them because the world of values and the world of facts coexists, but the relationship doesn't seem to be one-to-one.
I mean, the American pragmatists are interesting philosophically, and there are some things I like about them. And one is they really stress the importance of activity and thought. You know, thoughts don't just, the world doesn't just come to you. You have to do something to think, right? And so they really stress the activity of the mind. And they really stress the role of ideas in action. And I think that's something that's left out in a lot of philosophy. But I think they lose the reality in doing that. So they treat it as though consciousness is just something that's running your life. And your ideas are just what your mind's busy doing. But I think what we know and can tell to be the case when we just introspect on our own consciousness and think about what it is to be conscious, is that to be conscious is to be conscious of something, to be conscious of something independent of yourself. There's a world out there, and what we mean by consciousness is a grasp of an awareness of that world. We wouldn't even be able to get the idea of our own consciousness except by contrast to a world that we're distinguishing it from. You close your eyes and you open them and you think the thing's still there. You know, you have the idea of a world that's there, and then your consciousness is of that world. And I think you have to have that idea of knowledge, and knowledge being about something that's independent of you. And I think the pragmatists lose that. I think there's this kind of dichotomy we find in thought between everything's in your head, and your mind's very active in your knowing the world and you're deciding things, and therefore you don't actually get at the world the way it actually is. And then on the other side, you do get at the world the way it actually is, but because you don't do anything. It just comes to you passive. And I think both of those are wrong. There's activity you have to do to get at the world, but it's activity to get at the way the world is. And of course, you get at it in a certain form. Just like if I pick something up, I'm holding it in one form, and I could hold it in a different form, you know. But I'm still holding it. It's not like I'm not getting it in.
I think
and likewise for values.
I think the pragmatists do retain the world, but they look at it slightly different. They say, the world is what objects to your stupid theory. So let's say so it's not that the world is made of objects. The world is made of what objects to your stupid theory. That's a whole different idea, and it's a way more sophisticated idea. And so for the pragmatists, if you lay out a theory in the world in action, and the action obtains its end, then the theory is sufficiently true. But you know, lots of times when you lay out your theory in the world, you don't get what you expected. And then the question is, what do you get? And you might say, well, you get an array of new facts. It's like, no, that's not what happens. What you do What you get is an array of new incomprehensible possibilities. And that's not the same thing as a set of facts. So let me give you an example. You'll all understand this very rapidly. Imagine you're married to someone and you trust them and they betray you. And you discover that one day. So that's the world objecting to your stupid theory. That's for sure. Because you had a theory about who you were and a theory about who your partner was and a theory about what your life was. And that theory was seriously wrong. Past, present, and future are all something radically new. You might say, well, a new set of facts confronts you. Really? Is that right? Okay. Just what are those facts? It's like you'll be in a pit for 2 or 3 years trying to just get the bare facts out of that situation. The only thing you'll know for sure when the world objects to your stupid theory is that you were wrong. It's not like the world is going to array itself. It's like, who is this person that I was married to? That's what's going to be the question. And the question is, what kind of fool was I for making these presuppositions to begin with? And it's not like that new knowledge will manifest itself in a set of instantly apprehensible facts about the true nature of the world. You're going to be suffering like mad for a very good long time before you can take what you have, which isn't facts, but just confusion, and transform that into something that's even vaguely resembling a set of apprehensible facts. You'll be in serious psychological trouble until the world re-reveals itself as a set of apprehensible facts. And if you're traumatized badly enough, it'll never happen. And so that's another part of the problem with the idea that the world just represents itself as facts from which you can derive values. It's like, not when you're bloody confused, and you're confused a lot, and you're confused when the range of potential that's manifested exceeds your grasp, exceeds your capabilities. And then the way you respond to that isn't even cognitively. The way you respond to that, this is part of embodied cognition. What do you do when something incomprehensible objects to you? Well, it depends on how incomprehensible it is. But let's say, what did you do when the Twin Towers fell? Was it a set of facts? It's like you didn't know what the hell was going on, and neither did anyone else. What you did was go into a state of crisis. And that state of crisis is actually an embodied pre-cognitive response. And what happens biologically is that you get flooded with cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and what it does is prepare you to take a very large array of potential actions. That's your response. So it's not like the world has arrayed itself as a set of facts from which you can derive value. What happens is the world has arrayed itself as an incomprehensible mystery, and you have to do something about that. And what you do is ratchet up your physiology so that you're burning yourself up, because you age faster when this sort of thing happens, which is why you age faster if you're in crisis. You burn yourself up in the attempt to do everything at once, to prepare to do everything at once. And that's really the world manifesting itself as an object and objecting to your theory. It doesn't come out as an array of facts. It would be so lovely if every time you were wrong, what happened was a new array of facts manifested itself.
The point is that the reality doesn't just show up. It's not just an array of facts, but when that cortisol happens, when that event happens, what you do is consciously make an effort to go find the facts. If you
for sure.
So the facts are still in reality. So something happened in 9/11. So the first thing you do is, what actually happened? You have to figure out what actually happened. There's real work and real cognitive effort. Who are these people? What is the ideology driving them? Why did they do it? All of these things are facts that exist in reality, and your responsibility, your moral responsibility, I think, to yourself, is to go find and discover the facts that are relevant for the decisions and the actions you need to take, given the event that's happened. So, yes, psychologically, if you discover your wife's betraying you, you're confused, but I think your job as a human being is, okay, what actually happened? And where did I make my mistake? So it's hard. But this is part of what free will is. Free will is that engaging reason, engaging our consciousness to discover the facts out there and apply them to making a new conclusion, right? Okay, so something is wrong in my evaluation of my wife. What was it? Did she really betray me? Are the facts true? Is what's going on here real? So all of it is, again, a return to reason, a return to discovery of facts, which is what reason does.
Okay, so two things. First, you mentioned the relevant facts, and that's the rub. But I would also say, interestingly enough, in relationship to your argument, the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget made a very similar claim. He said that because the domain of established facts was mutable, and that's the issue, say, with the fact that your partner could betray you, even what you know can be mutable, right? Then what is relevant in the search for truth isn't the search for a set of immutable facts, but a search for the process by which facts are generated from the chaotic potential to begin with. It's not exactly how Piaget worded it, but
the facts are there. Your wife is either betraying you or she's not betraying you. It's not, there's always a potential, there's lots of potentialities. But she's either betraying you, she's not betraying you. And your job is to discover whether she is or she isn't, right? If that's the job you've assigned yourself, right? So the reality is what it is. It's not dependent on you discovering it or not. Your responsibility, if you're married, is to know whether your wife is betraying you or not. Hopefully you don't need to do the exercise because she's not, and you have trust in that. But your consciousness is identifying the truth of what's out there. It's not some array of infinite possibilities. She could be betraying you, she could be half betraying you, she can't be half betraying you, just like she can't be half pregnant. So there are two possibilities. She's either betraying you, she's not. And your job is to apply reason, which I take as identifying what is true and what is not, what is factual and what is not, what is the evidence, weighing the evidence. And then there's a whole psychological assessment of why did this happen to me, what did I see, did I screw up, did she screw up, why was my assessment before? But that's a separate question. First, did she or didn't she? So it strikes me as this is relatively simple, right? The facts are what they are. Our job is to discover them.
And let me say about this, the world objecting to your theory. It's certainly true that the world objects to stupid theories. If you've got them, try it out. But I don't take that as a definition of the world. It's one fact about the world. And more importantly, it's a fact about our theories, that they better match the world. Otherwise, we're going to have trouble with them. And when you get into this situation, and this is what the pragmatists take it too often, as though the theory is just there. We're not too interested in how it got there, except by repeated episodes of what's about to happen, which is that the world objects to it, and then you go scrambling to try to get out of this state of cognitive dissonance that you're in because of the objection. So, Dewey says at one point, thought's a disease, right? Everything's easy and nice. You don't have to think. You just go by in some stupor. He wouldn't put it that way. But and then some fact objects, and now or the world objects, and now you're in dissonance, and you've got to figure out how to reconfigure your mental life so that you can get on with it. And that is what a lot of people did after 9/11, right? A lot of people, something unexpected and horrible happened, and what they were motivated to do was figure out what are the fewest moves I can make to get things to go back to normal and be all right. I don't care what's true. I don't care who really did this. I don't care what would really solve it. I just care what I can tell myself to make this confusion and disruption and agitation go away. And that's dishonesty, and that's wrong. And to really value honesty and wanting to get the right answer and being rational in these situations and caring about what happens to your damn life. You can't say, oh, I just want to be back into blissful oblivion by coming up with some new theory.
Why do you think
how can I tell what went wrong in the first place? I got to this theory somehow.
Yeah.
Now I see that the theory is wrong. What mistake did I make along the way? What was the process by which I generated this theory? And what was the misstep in that process? How can I fix it to generate a new theory, one that will be true? And that process by which you generate your theories, it's a process of forming concepts, it's a process of collecting evidence. It's a complicated process. There's a lot to say about it, right?
Sounds like repentance and atonement to me.
Well, it can be, but it's in that you're acknowledging an error and you're trying to fix it. But you're trying to see how you made this theory and how you can make it better. And this idea that philosophy and real thinking starts when you come to contradictions. You get this back in the Greeks with the dialectical tradition and people debating each other. And I think there's something really profound in Aristotle as opposed to Plato and the other Greeks. The other Greeks, they seem to, and then later Hegel, they come up with contradictions and they think, what can we do to get past this contradiction? But what Aristotle always does, and all of his books have this structure, I think it's brilliant, he gets into a field by discussing the debates in it. He shows all the contradictions and all the puzzles, and it can't be this and this. And then he says, let's start fresh. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's think about how we got here. And then he crafts a new theory, starting from the kind of facts that motivated the old theories, from the kind of observations, let's say, that motivated the old theories, but that avoids the difficulties in the new one. Rather than just trying to reconfigure to go forward, you go back. And if there's a hierarchy, not just a hierarchy of values, but also a hierarchy of our understanding of the world, certain ways of understanding it are more basic and others are built up on top of that. When you find that one of your theories, and a theory is a really complex way of knowing, right? When you find that one of your theories is mistaken, you think, how can I go back to the more basic, more primitive types of knowledge, more basic types of observations, whatever it might be, from which I generated this theory, and now add to it the new observations and the new knowledge that I have based on what went wrong, and generate a new theory that will be better than it.